Look at them, these humans. Such little pests, scurrying around in the vast cosmic theater. They think they're so clever, these tiny bugs, taking their first clumsy steps into their own solar system. An intergalactic civilization? Not even close. Interstellar? Don't make me laugh. They haven't even seen the end of their own backyard. Their greatest achievement is reaching the edge of their planetary cycle, a little something they call the Kuiper Belt. And what is it? Just a messy field of leftover space rocks from when their system was born. Honestly, their own solar system couldn't even manage to use up all its materials to make proper planets. How pathetic. They're still just children playing in the cosmic dust, completely unaware of what's truly out there. Ooh, these little bugs. You know, across the entire Milky Way, pretty much every other race just can't stand these creatures. They're soft, and let's be honest, by galactic standards, they're not exactly the sharpest tools in the shed. Can you believe they have to put their own people into stasis just to travel around their tiny solar system? If they were truly interstellar capable, they wouldn't need to put their pets to sleep, so to speak. It takes them 10 to 12 years just to get from their little planet Earth. They call it to the Kuiper Belt. And yet somehow, while stumbling around in the grand cosmic scheme of things, they've actually managed to build a space station right on the edge of it. It's almost ... impressive. Almost. So, humanity built this cosmic convenience store out in the middle of nowhere, hoping to meet cool new alien species and become major players in the galactic trade scene. The big dream was for this station to be a bustling waypoint, a hub of commerce and diplomacy. A decade later, how's that going? Well, not exactly as planned. Sure, ships come and go, but most of the time, they're just passing through. They might stop for a quick repair, let their crew stretch their legs, and then they're off again. It seems most species see our little station more as a curiosity, maybe even something to pity. They'll trade with each other here, but rarely with us humans. We've met a few new species, sure, but the major galactic powers? They just fly right on by, barely giving our little pet project a second glance. Just another day at the Kuiper Station, business as usual, as the humans like to say. This place is bustling, mostly with humans going about their day. But look closer, and you'll see a vibrant mix of alien species wandering around, checking out everything the station has to offer. It's a real melting pot of the galaxy. This station isn't just a marketplace, it's neutral ground. See those ruins over there? That's where the real action happens. Species from all corners sit down, negotiate trade, and forge alliances for the benefit of everyone. Of course, it's not always smooth sailing. You get the occasional squabble, a bit of pushing and shoving, even some heated arguments that sound like the brink of war. That's when the humans step in, doing their best to mediate and find a peaceful resolution. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Just another day in the life of the Kuiper Station. They say humans have a real talent for messing things up, and honestly, they do a fantastic job of it. As time ticked on aboard the space station, all sorts of species came and went. It was just another day until an unknown craft docked. Out came a group of about 6 individuals, all bipedal, but definitely not human. They headed straight for the housing office on the 14th deck with a peculiar request. They wanted to rent living quarters, but with one condition. All the rooms had to be right next to each other, or at the very least, directly across the hall. The human clerk in charge of assigning rooms paused for a second, a little thrown off by the odd stipulation. But hey, a customer's a customer. He shrugged, granted their request, and handed over the new room keys. Little did he know what he'd just set in motion. We left the front desk and headed for the transporters to take us up to the 14th deck. Getting to our rooms was another journey in itself, weaving through long, winding corridors. When we finally found our room numbers, we opened one up. It was an inner room, no windows, but surprisingly more spacious than the ones along the outer corridor. We all agreed that our one female companion should take an inner room for herself. The rest of us would split the remaining rooms equally. Once we settled that, we all went our separate ways. We had told the front desk we'd be staying for a full Earth week. The receptionist found it odd. Our ship wasn't in for repairs, and we hadn't booked any meeting rooms. We were just ... here. He decided to flag it for the station commander, Ann Thomas, an old military vet who took this post hoping for a quiet life, dreaming of the space adventures he imagined as a kid. This, however, was far from the simple life he'd envisioned. Don told the station security chief to watch the group that just checked in. They looked suspicious. The chief asked him, "What's your feeling?" Dan couldn't quite define it, but he had it. The chief smiled and said, "The Thomas feeling. Just in case, I'll put the station on standby and request a battle fleet closer to the station." Don chuckled, then got straight-faced and asked, "Does everything go to hell when I have this feeling?" The chief laughed. "Are you serious right now? Every time you have this feeling, it's like the world is coming to an end." Don just nodded and grunted. As he walked away, he stopped, turned around, and told the chief, "Maybe it is a good idea to have that battle fleet closer." The chief started to laugh, then stopped abruptly. "Are you serious?" Dan smiled, turned, and walked away. The chief called out his name, but he never answered. The chief just rolled his eyes and mumbled, "Oh boy, we are in for one hell of a week." The chief strode briskly into the security office, his face a mask of concern. He leaned over the main console, addressing the officer on duty. "Listen up. I need all eyes on Deck 14, Corridor J13. We've got 6 new arrivals who just checked into those rooms. The commander has a bad feeling about them, and frankly, so do I." One of the younger officers muttered under his breath, "Oh no, not the Thomas feeling again." The chief lowered his head and nodded grimly. "Oh yeah, that feeling again." His voice became firm. "I want additional patrols around the entire station, effective immediately. Full alert." A ripple of tension went through the room. The mention of extra patrols meant this was serious. The control room personnel snapped to attention, their fingers flying across the keyboards, bringing up the requested feeds. Something was definitely wrong. A full week drifted by, and the 6 mysterious figures remained at the station. Nothing happened. A sense of calm began to settle over the command staff, their initial apprehension starting to fade. The chief approached the commander, a casual air about him. "So, how are we feeling about this?" The commander just shrugged his shoulders, a wry smile on his face. Maybe I was wrong," he admitted, though he couldn't entirely shake the uneasy feeling that had been nagging at him. "Either way," the chief continued, "we have a battle fleet just 90 parsecs out. They can be here within an hour if we call." The commander nodded in agreement. "All right, pull the extra patrols back in. Get the pilots on mandatory downtime, and let's get those fighters prepped and back on the ready line as soon as possible." The chief nodded and began issuing the order. Extra patrols landed, and their pilots were sent on a mandatory 48-hour break, leaving only the standard patrol craft on duty. Meanwhile, the commander returned to his ready office to contact the leader of the nearby battle group. It was his brother, David Thomas. This was David's last patrol, his last battle group. He was set to retire in just 2 weeks. Don hailed them. "Battle Group 273. This is Kuiper Station." A young lieutenant answered. "Go ahead, Kuiper Station. This is Battle Group 273. "Yes, this is Kuiper Station, Actual," Dan replied. "I need to speak with Battle Group Actual." The lieutenant told him to hold. A moment later, David's voice came through. "Go ahead, Kuiper Actual. David, how are you?" "Very good," David said. Dan asked, "What are you guys doing so far from Earth?" David explained they were training a lot of green crop pilots running fighter and bomber maneuvers within the belt. Why the call, Dans? This is unorthodox. Yeah, I know. I just have a feeling. The Thomas feeling? Yeah, that feeling. Why? What's going on? Well, we have 6 suspicious individuals who came aboard about a week ago. They've been keeping to themselves, mostly staying in their quarters, even eating there. Okay, so they're antisocial. Yeah, but I think it's more than that. I don't know. All right, calm down. We'll be out here for another 2 weeks. Then we head back to Saturn Station. Do you still have a full complement in your battle group? Yes, and then some. We added 14 additional ships from Battle Group 27. We are ready for anything. Stay vigilant and keep me updated. Yeah, most of that battle group ended up in dry dock for repairs. You remember that whole disastrous mess with the Saturn asteroid belt? The commander's now up on charges for dereliction of duty. Anyway, that's when Dan asked about his full complement. David listed it out. 15 dreadnought battleships. 3 of those old monster heavy battle carriers. 47 destroyers and a few picket battle cruisers. Plus over 5,000 air wings, counting fighters, bombers, and recon. Dan just nodded, looking a bit unnerved, and asked if they could stay close. David reassured him. We'll stay close. We're about 90 parsecs away from you now, and we won't move any further unless we're called away, which I don't see happening. You could just see the relief wash over Dan's face. Then David added, Besides, that old station can handle a supernova. Dan just chuckled and said, Yeah, you're right. David tried to calm him down before ending the call. Don sat alone in his office, his eyes fixed on the security camera feed. He pulled up the view of that specific corridor and just stared. Nothing. Not a single thing moved, but he couldn't look away. After what felt like an eternity, he finally stood up and walked onto the station's bridge. He asked, Is everything normal? The bridge staff all nodded. Yes, sir, his XO confirmed. Dan just nodded back, still feeling uneasy. He started wandering around the bridge, listening to the chatter from the various stations. Suddenly, a call blared from the dispatch center. A fight had just broken out on the promenade. Security was being called to respond immediately. Dan's unease sharpened into full-blown alarm. What was really happening on his station? Dan got jumpy and asked what the fight call was about. The dispatcher just shrugged. We get at least one of these a day. Dan nodded, trying to calm down. Yeah, you're right. But just then, another call crackled through the comms. Weapons fire on the 14th deck, corridor J13. Everyone froze. All eyes snapped to the commander. He knew this was it, the moment they had been dreading. His voice was grim, but steady as he ordered dispatch. Send security. Tell them to bring heavy weapons. The dispatcher nodded, already relaying the call and the chilling order. A cold silence fell over the room. Everyone knew the station's security staff had been thinned out recently. They were sending a skeleton crew, armed to the teeth, into the unknown. The real fight was just beginning. Security forces raced to the corridor, but they were met with a wall of resistance. At least 50 heavily armed hostiles had sealed it off, creating a deadly choke point. Security couldn't advance, but they could see the attackers desperately trying to breach specific rooms. Up on the bridge, the commander's patience wore thin. I have to get down there, he declared, turning to leave. But his XO stepped in his path. Sir, your place is on this bridge, she stated firmly. The chief and his team have this. Our duty is to ensure the safety of every other person on this ship. The commander paused, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. He looked at the chaos on the main screen, then back at his XO's unwavering gaze. He gave a single decisive nod. She was right. Then he ordered all off-duty security personnel to be recalled. We need more boots on the ground, he said, his voice tight. We need to make sure there aren't any more fights or other crimes about to happen." The XO acknowledged the order and immediately began recalling all off-duty security. You could feel the tension on the bridge building, almost crackling in the air. Everyone knew this feeling. When the commander gets this look in his eye, something always goes bad. It's an unspoken rule, a grim certainty. Finally, the rest of the security personnel started reporting for duty. The XO turned back to the commander. "We have 5,000 additional security personnel on duty, sir. Some will begin standard patrols, and a few are already responding to the 14th deck." But the commander just stared at the main view screen, his gut telling him this was just the beginning. "We have several quick reaction force units on standby, ready to respond anywhere when needed." The commander began tapping his hands together, and everyone on the bridge watched that motion. The anxiety was palpable. When the commander starts tapping his hands like that, it means things are about to go bad, and go bad quickly. The commander looked at the XO. "Okay, we need to end the firefight on Deck 14. Send in the droids." The XO paused for a moment, then replied, "Sir, those are for military action, like if the station gets overrun or all security personnel are incapacitated." The commander simply nodded his head and said, "Just do it. Send in 4 droids. We end this now." The XO cautiously acknowledged the orders and relayed them to security. The chief, right in the middle of the melee on Deck 14, asked for confirmation over the radio. The XO confirmed, "We are sending in the droids. Those orders are coming directly from the commander." With a nod from the chief, the station's deepest secret was unleashed. From inside the security office, 4 massive droids powered on. They stepped out of a hidden storage unit, their metallic footsteps echoing as they marched into the main promenade. Panic erupted. Civilians scattered, screaming. No one had ever seen anything like them. These weren't simple security bots. Standing 8 feet tall and bristling with heavy weaponry, they were machines built for war. The station was so isolated, so far from Earth's reach, that the humans had prepared for the absolute worst. These units weren't for standard police actions. They were designed to pacify any situation, no matter how extreme. The message was clear. Human ingenuity was far more sophisticated and dangerous than anyone had imagined. It was a terrifying display of power, meant to end any conflict before it truly began. The units finally reached the elevator. As the doors slid open, they were met with a packed car. A few screams erupted as startled passengers scrambled out, clearing the way. The units stepped inside, the doors closing behind them, and began their ascent to the 14th deck. The ride wasn't smooth. The elevator stopped a couple of times unexpectedly. On one stop, the doors opened to reveal a pair of slug-like aliens, Samkelis, who stared in confusion. One mumbled to the other, "We'll wait for the next one," as the doors shut again. Finally, arriving at their destination, the units exited and marched down the corridor. The rhythmic, heavy thud of their steps echoed, a sound that didn't go unnoticed. The criminals ahead felt the vibrations. A sense of dread growing as security personnel suddenly started clearing a path right down the middle of the hallway. Something was definitely coming for them. One of them screamed out, "You guys are screwed now. Give up or become hamburger." They had no idea what that meant, but they knew something bad was coming. Finally, they rounded the corner, and there they were, 4 heavily armed droids marching towards them, weapons replacing where their hands should be. The droids ordered them to surrender or feel the full wrath of their capabilities. A few of the crew, thinking they were the main characters of this siege, opened fire. The droids returned it, but with rotary cannons, laying waste to the corridor. The survivors quickly gave up. The chief and a couple of security officers pulled back the hoods on their captives' cloaks and realized they were Junvestus, a wolf-like warrior species. The chief, puzzled, looked at one on the ground, and demanded to know why they were raising hell in the station. The captive looked up and said, "Do you have any idea who you have here?" The chief shrugged his shoulders and said, "No." Then he looked at the captured guards and asked, "You have the princess of the Marvol clan?" One of the guards nodded. The chief stepped back and ordered his men, "Get them out of here." He then turned his attention to the remaining security officers around him, took a deep breath, and walked up to the room doors. He began knocking firmly. In a loud, clear voice, he announced, "Princess, this is the chief of station security. You are safe now. Please open the door." A moment later, one door cracked open, revealing a male Marvol. The chief stared at him, confused. "Well," he said, "you don't look like a princess." The door immediately slammed shut. A few seconds passed, then the same door opened again. This time, a female Marvol appeared in the doorway. The chief was stunned. Even though the guards had mentioned a princess, he hadn't truly believed it. "Princess?" he asked, still in disbelief. She simply nodded. Shaking off his surprise, he continued, "Why are you here on this station and not on your homeworld?" She explained that her world had been attacked, and the 6 males were the last of her royal guard. The commander stared at the chief, then at the young woman. "Why is she here?" The chief sighed. "She's escaping from the Junvestas. It seems they attacked her home world, Molvar, and she barely escaped with what was left of her palace guards. She came to us, hoping the Junvestas would never find her here. But apparently they did." The commander began pacing. "Well, we can assume they've already notified the rest of their forces. An entire fleet could be on its way right now." The chief nodded grimly. The commander stopped. "I need to contact my brother and get his battle fleet here immediately." He turned to the chief and his tactical officer. "Start preparing for an invasion. Get the station's weapons online, unpack more battle droids, and arm all fighters with heavy ordnance. Make sure every pilot is ready for a fight." They both acknowledged as the commander rushed into his office to call his brother. "Kuiper Station Actual to Battle Group 273. Go ahead." "Kuiper Actual. I am looking for Battle Group 273 Actual." The lieutenant said to stand by. A few moments later, David got on the radio. "Yeah, Dan, what's going on?" "David, we need your battle group here right now. We just had a massive firefight inside the station. We had to deploy our battle droids, and I'm afraid more is coming." David was in momentary shock, but he snapped back to reality. He told Dan he was going to recall all of his aircraft and make way for the station. He'd also contact Earth Command to get more battle groups underway. It will take several hours for the craft to land and be stored, so you will need to make do with station defenses until we get there. Knowing that you are coming will ease the anxiety building inside the station. Just hold on. We are coming. Thanked him. David replied, saying it would take several hours for the craft to land and be stored. You'll need to make do with station defenses until we get there. Dan nodded, then said, "Knowing that you are coming will ease the anxiety building inside the station." David's voice was firm. "Just hold on, we are coming." As the call ended, the commander walked out onto the station's bridge. He looked around for a moment and spoke. He knew the anxiety was building. That dread was just around the corner. But we just need to hold the station for a few hours. Battle Group 273 is only 90 parsecs away, conducting aircraft maneuvers. I just contacted them, and they are on their way. You could see the relief wash over everyone's faces. If they come, this will be the first battle this station has ever seen. Systems untested, a reality Earth had hoped would never arrive. If the Junvestas come, they'll bring a fleet hundreds of ships strong. Dan started to wonder, even with the station's immense firepower and the incoming battle group, would it be enough? Could they really hold off an attack from a species older than humanity itself? We were about to find out. The commander stared at the tactical display, demanding long-range scans. At best, it would give us a 20-minute warning. He turned to the chief. Get the blast shelters ready. Everyone on the station. The chief acknowledged and immediately began coordinating the evacuation. Meanwhile, the XO was busy with defense and damage control teams preparing for the worst. The commander mumbled to himself, a grim look on his face. Now we wait. The quiet before the storm was always the hardest part. Stay tuned for the next chapter. Thanks for watching. Phantom Static, where the phantoms speak through the static.